What is up, everybody? It's that time of the week where I'm joined by my good friends from the LFC Transfer Room, Charlie, Jack, and of course, Chris. Lovely to have you guys back. Charlie, great to hear that you're feeling better. And Jack, I hope that you're okay, because I know you're in close contact at the minute and you're eagerly awaiting a test result. Thus is the world that we live in, gents. Lovely to have you all on board. Again, I would urge everybody to make sure you go over, follow LFC Transfer Room on all platforms, especially during this time of the year. We all love a transfer, and these guys have got their finger right on the pulse. Also want to give a shout out to our sponsors, Manscaped. 20% off and free shipping at manscaped.com using our discount code WFM20. Right, I'm going to put you under the gun first, Chris, because you know you've got a new love in your life. Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain is gone. It's all about
He's
Cody
not gone
for you.
He's not gone. He'll always remain. I'm polyamorous, Craig. I spread my love everywhere. But no, my newfound love, Cody Gakpo. Having watched about 5 YouTube highlights of him, I am now found my next Mohamed Salah. This man is 6'2". He's 6'2", right? And he's a winger. And he has scored 10 goals and got 10 assists this season for PSV. Now, I'm telling you right now, boys. His improvement, his ceiling is high. And with Trent Alexander-Arnold and Andy Robertson whipping crosses onto his 6'2" head, Liverpool have their next Salah.
I thought you were going to say that Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain there after his diving header the other day, Chris. I mean, you're probably still laughing on the back garden because of that.
We all saw that the post-match video. By the way, Connor did not edit it. It just had Izzy saying, "Love you" in the background. Connor memed. But no, Ox's header did do things to me that, I didn't think could happen. And, honestly, I love the bloke. But if Gakpo came, I might have to switch my allegiance.
Yeah, you're a bit of a whore, Chris, aren't you? Let's be honest.
To be fair, you just asked my missus.
Bit of a man whore. There's nothing wrong with it. Charlie, have you anything to add other than Chris's 5 YouTube clips that he watched of Gakpo, mate? Because I'm completely in the dark on this, gentleman, I have to say.
I'm not going to lie. I feel like unless you watch the Eredivisie, you're probably not going to know who this fella is. I don't really know. Did like a tiny bit of research on him. He had having a decent season. I think he's got 6 goals and 10 assists in 14 games. But look, again, it's a bit of a tricky one, because how many of us watch the Eredivisie? All the free.
I'm watching it now, bro. I'm watching it now because I want that Cody, bro.
Yeah, all the free stats sites like FB Ref don't give you detailed stats, but a lot of talent comes from the Eredivisie. So it's and again, he's 6'2". Somehow he's a winger and he's 6'2". He has played a few games up front, which I feel like would be useful for us. Give us a bit of a different direction with like Robertson and Trent not whipping balls into 5'8" wingers. Maybe get him up there. But look, he's 22, isn't he, Chris? So he's still only young. He's been capped by the Netherlands as well. So that's an interesting one too. But if we got him for a decent price, I wouldn't say no. But I don't want to give my opinion on him just yet. I don't want to be like, oh, he's shit him, and then 5 years he's winning the Ballon d'Or. But
that's what I am as well. I'm afraid to say it in case this lad turns out to be shit hot.
Yeah, I mean, I'd take him at a reasonable price, but if we're getting to the likes of 40, 50 million, I wouldn't take him for that.
Jack, I want to come to you, mate, and I want to get your opinion on somebody who we haven't actually spoken about much here on our channel. I'm sure you guys have, and that's Marcus Thuram of Mönchengladbach. Probably the most versatile of those names linked, probably play anywhere across the front three. One that I hadn't really seen much interest in until obviously the Athletic put out their list of people that they believe we've been looking at.
Yeah, and it's really interesting. I want to hit real quick on Gakpo before I move to what you asked about, Craig. And Chris, I was surprised to hear that you're a big fan of him, because I believe you played down the interest in Houlden because he's a tall forward, and you always say, how many forwards are successful at Liverpool? And
everyone would be Chris, and it's not just us. That's really reassuring.
I play devil's avocado, to quote James. Play devil's avocado. Some people people always jump on the Haaland train. You should, fraud. Gakpo's the way
Yeah,
forward.
they're losing 2-0 right now. I believe he's playing to a very poor side. But look, and as is the case with all those guys in that list, they all make sense based on the recruitment for Liverpool, because it's much like Jota, I think, was brought in for Firmino, because he wasn't going to be the direct replacement where day one Jota was better than Firmino, because that costs too much money to buy direct replacements. But you need to kind of have them phasing in, phasing out of your best players. Marcus Thuram, again, not the most experience in following him. He's got 12 appearances in the Bundesliga this season, no goals, no assists in that competition, which is a bit alarming, and the side that's kind of underperforming. But we're obviously a fan of him and Florian Neuhaus, who are two guys on that side. So, again, I think all those guys, again, the system is so well built, they could all come in and have some success. I think the flexibility of a guy like Thuram would especially be useful. Gakpo, looking at his numbers, plays mostly off on the left wing. He'd be great for competition with Mane, but maybe Thuram makes a bit more sense. I think it just comes down to what Charlie mentioned and the price. If we get a good price for any one of them, and it just makes sense in terms of contract, wages, that's probably the decision that's made there. And Nkunku might be a bit too high in price. So it's an interesting list, but I'm really fascinated if anything comes from any of it.
It is an interesting list, Chris, and there's only one name on that list that I'm really on board with, and that's your fellow Herefordian.
It is. I mean, what I will say is Jarrod and Nkunku are probably
Jarrod now, Charlie. Do you get this? He's on a first-name basis. Jarrod now.
Yeah, he is. Yeah, Jarrod Bowen and Nkunku. I call him Jarrod because we live just down the road from each other. No, but no, Bowen and Nkunku would be the two premium options in terms of money. I think the gamble would be how many of those two will you go for, and do you couple that with another forward, or do you just put all your primary interest in one of them? I mean, with Jarrod, I keep calling him Jarrod now. with Bowen,
Bowman, I didn't watch.
With Bowen, you have proven Premier League quality, and I think FSG experience that value that experience very, very highly. With Thuram, I mean, the name is massive. Obviously, his father won a lot as a player, and when he came on to the scene, he obviously was noticed because of that. But his defensive stats are better than any other on the list. In terms of pressures and blocks and interceptions, he's some of the top in world football. Maybe that's been taken notice of in terms of his scouting. But yeah, Bowen for me is the him and Nkunku are the prime options.
For you, Charlie, let's move on to Nkunku for a second, mate. I mean, what will be your, as Jack said, probably one of the more expensive options outside of Bowen on that list. Certainly one that'll be probably most familiar to the audience watching.
Yeah, I mean, he's having an unbelievable season at Leipzig at the moment. And obviously, we do have a good relationship with Leipzig and the Red Bull organisation. So, he's not going to be cheap either, if we're being honest. He's probably going to cost the most on that list. He's only 24, so it does match with the players that we have been looking at. Bowen 24, Rafinha 24, Luis Diaz 24. He can play on the left, he can play on the right. I think he'll probably stick him up front and he'd do a decent job. And obviously, his main position for Leipzig has been in that attacking midfield role right behind the striker. This season, he's got 9 goals, 9 assists. He's absolutely flying in the Champions League too. 7 goals and 2 assists in 6 games, which is unbelievable. So, he's having a really, really big breakthrough season. They're definitely not going to let him go in January. That'd be absolutely stupid. But with the way he's performing, the age, he's still got until 2025 or 2024 on his contract. So they don't need to let him go at the end of the day. And for the fact that they got him for 10 million from PSG in 2019, and I reckon they're probably going to get 60 million plus in next summer if they do want to let him go. But again, I think it will be a hard transfer to do, but definitely worth doing for Liverpool. It fits the model of player that we are looking at. And I think he's probably a lot more versatile than he's probably more versatile than everyone on that list, to be fair. And I think he's a lot more versatile than every other option that we are going with. And, he's got top level experience. Leipzig are a Champions League side. They are always in the mix, like top 4 or even sometimes even challenging in the Bundesliga. So, it's not like he is coming in from the Eredivisie, playing Europa League games. He's playing at the top level. So that's definitely, I think, something that the club and Klopp will take into account. But I think I can speak for us all and say he's probably one that we all want the most out of that list of players who we will link with.
Yeah, I mean, I'm Jarrod Bowen first and foremost, if I'm being honest, but I really do rate the guy. But look, Jack, one question I suppose that everybody tuning in and looking at us wants to know is, what is the odds of us actually doing any business in January? Because I've been fairly open and honest and said I think it will be a shock if we did actually go out there and bring in somebody in this market, unless an injury pops up.
Yeah, and it's so tough for us because we're content creators. We want to kind of push, the signing's going to happen, especially for us. It's in the name. We need a transfer. Kind of starving over here, but I really don't expect something to happen, especially because of AFCON. I almost imagine that we were less likely to sign someone because just the way the squad was built. Because just based on registration, you need to let somebody go in order to bring someone new in because you're already filled up to the 25. So who are you dropping out to bring in somebody? You're taking out Origi, you're taking out Minamino, and then you're risking your immediate depth for these immediate matches.
I heard that, Charlie.
I didn't hear that, so I can't even reference that. But I really have low expectations for what to expect this window, especially with those names like Nkunku and Bowen, especially because those clubs have really big aspirations for the last 6 months of the season. So the premium that you'd have to pay to bring them in 6 months early, I think would push a lot out there. I think that if something was to be signed, I think I saw it was you, Craig. I saw that clip of you reacting to Klopp's comments about what could we have done to prepare for this. If that preparation should have happened in the summer, someone else should have been brought in to plan for this in this moment. Because next thing you know, once a player's bedded in, it's gonna be like a Ben Davies situation, where once he's actually needed, or once he's ready to be played, he's no longer needed. And then you kind of have a really awkward 6 month period. So I don't expect anything in terms of price point and in terms of squad fit at the moment, which is, I think, sad to a certain extent. But it's also just kind of the way things are. I trust in this team to be able to have a bit of decent depth, especially with how Minamino's been performing. But if anything happens, it's a welcome surprise. But it's going to be a surprise if anything does happen.
To touch on that, Chris, to touch on what Jack said there about squad places and freeing up registration spots. I mean, Divock Origi situation is kind of interesting because there is this option for the club to trigger, but we know he has to play a certain amount of games, which it doesn't look like he's going to do because of opportunities and injury at this particular moment in time. Then we move on to the old guard, the Salah, the Firmino, the Mane, and something has got to give there. And then for me personally, I've been fairly honest about my assessment of the midfield. I think at least one, if not two, of Oxlade-Chamberlain, Thiago, and Keita need to go. Probably Keita and Oxlade-Chamberlain, if I'm being really honest, because I think you can carry a Thiago. You can allow for that Rolls Royce in your squad, particularly with the price we got him for. But I don't think we can afford to carry more passengers with, we know Klopp likes a small enough squad to work with. A lot to unpack there, mate. Sorry.
Yeah. I mean, the one thing that really winds me up and that wound me up at the time was that we gave Adrian a new contract. Now, I'm going to think about forward planning. You give a aging goalkeeper who's probably going to be your third choice, maybe even fourth, with Pitaluga coming through, a new deal to take up one of your foreign spots. That's one of the biggest issues coming through for Liverpool at the moment is homegrown players and homegrown spots. Luckily, this season, we've seen like Connor Bradley, Tyler Morton come through who could potentially take up spots. But look at the players we're probably going to sell. We're looking at, you mentioned Ox, Nat Phillips, Nico Williams, potentially Joe Gomez, all homegrown. And then obviously you got Mane, Salah, Firmino, Keita, who could all potentially go. Thiago, as you mentioned. We're going to see a dramatic rebuild. And it's probably not, it shouldn't be like that. We should have planned more in advance and maybe started interjecting one or two players at a time. And I do think it will come to a point where we're injecting 6 or 7 players into a squad. And us at the transfer room will be loving that because that's content galore. But at the end of the day, it's not healthy for a squad. We saw after Luis Suarez left, like how much we got. We got swamped in just bringing players in because we had to bring players in. And I think it's going to get to that point.
There's one thing, Charlie, that, I've labelled a lot of stuff at FSG's door, but one thing that I've never really accused them of is a lack of planning or a lack of strategy. And here, mate, as Chris has touched on, we do face a situation where we're going to have 4, 5, 6 players need to be done, because right now we know of the 3 attackers. We know of Oxlade-Chamberlain and Naby Keita all got into the final 18 months. Divock Origi into his final 6 months. James Milner running down. That's a lot of places to fill.
Yeah, I mean, look, I wrote a very controversial article, to say the least, which was titled "Is Jurgen Klopp a yes man for FSG?" And I come to the conclusion I think he is.
I think every manager is, though. I think every manager is, apart from a couple.
Yeah, I agree, but I sort of went into, do I think that Klopp is challenging the owners? Because I just don't think he is. Klopp, how many times do we hear Klopp say that players need time to adapt to his system? Most players have needed probably 6 months, like for the majority of the time. So why can't we go and get 2 players last summer, and then they're fully embedded into the squad? They're a part of the team. They're not going to be coming in with let's say another 4 players that we need now. So as you said there, we're going to need 6 players because we've got so many people leaving. I think with the homegrown quota as well, I think that's where Jarrod Bowen will come in. I'm convinced we'll sign him purely because of that. But I do think we need another attacker as well. So it's a lot of players I think are going to be let go. I think we will see a massive rebuild in summer. And I think if it isn't, then serious questions need to be asked about the owners and about the management and unfortunately about Jurgen Klopp as well, because it's not hard to see that this team it's past its peak, it's past its best. It needs refreshing. Even if there's 2 players that it's been spoken about before, that new players bring they, even in the dressing room, they bring a lift to the players in there. Look at what happened when Jota come in. Mane started sort of performing again, and he's ended up overtaking Firmino. So it's needed for the fans and it's needed for the players as well. But is it going to have the same impact, for instance, when we need 6 players next summer because we have 6 players leaving? So it is a massive task, but I don't think the homegrown issue will be that big next season, because I can't see Origi leaving. Adrian's going as well, and I think one of the midfielders will go, and I think if we get an offer for Minamino as well, he'll probably leave. So it's a big job next summer for Jurgen Klopp and Michael Edwards is whatever, I forgot what his name is.
Julian Ward.
Yeah, that fella.
I want to come to Jack in a sec. I just want to address this. We need more than 2 players, mate. We need 2 players now, and that's before contracts run down, players get older, and we move people on. So, Jack, I've heard from Charlie there about the Jurgen Klopp yes man argument debate, and it is a conversation that we need to have as fans, because Chris gave an interesting perspective on this the other day as well, with regards to, is he a yes man, or is he genuinely somebody who loves to coach young players and loves to bring through the talent? And I understand we're reactive as a fan base, and we want to think that Klopp's in there banging down FSG's door and demanding signings because we can see that it needs be. But, if he was genuinely told when he came into the club what the plan was going to be, and a lot of that was going to be focused on bringing through young talent, then maybe he hasn't been deceived.
Yeah, I think when we look at the press conferences of Klopp saying, Oxlade-Chamberlain brings a different dynamic that we can't buy in the market, and that he's happy with his squad. And sometimes he has his bad moments in press conferences, but we almost listen to those and just put that off as coach speak and say that I don't believe what he's saying. He must be angry with his squad quality. I'm with the second opinion that you posed there, Craig, that I think that he is happy with the way the squad is being managed. I refuse to believe that FSG have more say in that room than Klopp does, because Klopp is a proven winner. He's proven to be able to develop players. He's the one who I think makes all the calls. And then you have to kind of move the discussion, in my eyes, to, is Klopp incorrect to not want to make as many new signings and have so much trust in his players? Because he does draw a lot out of some of his players at times. I think, especially with Minamino and Oxlade-Chamberlain having their pretty good highs, he can almost use that as evidence and say that trust these professional footballers and they will eventually deliver for you. So I don't know if I disagree with that he's a yes man, Charlie, but I almost think this is just the way that he manages. And you get Jurgen Klopp, but you also get a manager who is incredibly loyal to his players, and that brings out a level of quality in them as well. So when they go through their dips, they know that their manager isn't going to ship them out in the upcoming window like other clubs have that worry with. The level of ruthlessness is just very different between us and other clubs, and I appreciate that personally. But it also means you kind of need to tinker with how you view your expectations, because if you're not bringing in players, now I will say, to sign just Konate last summer was a mistake. To sign no one this window is also a mistake. I believe that that's a mistake. Now I think that the perfect window is a Jota, Thiago, Tsimikas, a rotationary player, a top end player, and a backup. Do that every window, and you don't have to spend more than, what do they spend, 80 million in that window? If you just are consistent with that and you don't take windows off, hint, hint, after winning the Champions League and this past window, you don't have to deal with these massive rebuilds. So it's really tough in that sense.
Where do you sit on this, Chris, at the minute? I mean, what should our expectations be for the club? You know, we know what we're up against financially with Chelsea, with Manchester City. Yes, we all love the idea in theory of bringing through young players. You know, nothing makes us happier than seeing somebody come from the academy through. But ultimately, it's a risky game if that's going to be the plan.
Yeah, definitely. I think, you know, it is the way that ideally we love a football club to be run, is to be bringing through the young players. I think the greatest dynasty in the history of English football, Manchester United, were built on that. You know, they were built on their young players coming through and you know, becoming the dynasty, you know, their key players and probably some of their best players ever. But even through that period, Sir Alex Ferguson, I always reference Sir Alex Ferguson, he built through, you know, he built for 26 years or however much he was there. Look, I'm not one to be saying that Liverpool fans should expect to win every single trophy every year, because statistically that doesn't happen, right? But we want that to happen. We want, you know, to reach perfection that doesn't exist at the end of the day. And you know, Jurgen Klopp's got a track record of this. Okay, I look back at 2014-15, his final season at Dortmund. Okay, he's got 35-year-old Roman Weidenfeller, Neven Subotic in 30s, Sebastian Kell, Sven Bender, Kagawa, who he re-signed, not Mkhitaryan, Mats Hummels, who was just about to leave, Blaszczykowski, Nuri Sahin, players who he's loyal to. Okay. And if the same is happening at Liverpool, and we saw the massive dip and the rebuild that Dortmund would have to go through. I'm not saying it's a bad way of managing, because I've had a great time as a Liverpool fan under Jurgen Klopp. But we have to be prepared for this, okay? And I think, you know, looking at history, we have to learn from history and not disregard it.
To come back to Charlie, because I want to be fair in this conversation, I understand where Charlie's coming from with the whole yes man conversation, but I think his loyalty can be a fault at times, Charlie, to certain players who haven't perhaps lived up to the faith shown in them. And look, a lot of different players who we feel that is, but for me, the little telltale factor with being too loyal is the substitution thing. Leaving them too long. I know he understands, he wants players to figure stuff out on the pitch, but sometimes you just have to act, and I feel like the same can be said in the transfer market. Yeah,
100%. I think, you know, the substitutions are a massive one. That's something that I was going to bring up. You know, he's since he's been in, really, hasn't it? He's just some of the substitutions are just absolutely baffling. And you know, with the transfer market as well, look, we all knew this was going to happen. You know, we signed these players when they were 25, 26, when they were, you know, in the peak. We knew in 5-6 years they were going to be slowing down, and that's when Klopp should have said, look, even though these players are at the peak now, I need to bring in some new 22, 23-year-olds who are already performing, bring them in, you know, and train them with these world-class players. I need you to get them into that, you know, I need to get them into that mold of what to do. I need to, you know, have them for a year, training them, giving them experience. But we haven't seen that, you know. At the end of the day, with the whole yes man thing, Klopp isn't going to come out. He's not that type of person. He's not the type of manager to come out in the public and, you know, criticize the owners. does he? I like to think that he's on the phone to John Henry every day saying, "Give me money." But is he realistically? I don't know. Is he happy with his small squad? Because yes, we were successful for them 2 years, and that was again when the whole team was at the prime, when we had a solid group of players that Klopp had worked with for years. And, he brought in the targets that he wanted. He brought in Salah, he brought in Mane, and he brought in Alisson and Van Dijk. And I still think we need another 4 key players like that to bring in, 4 signature signings to really, really get this second generation of Jurgen Klopp back. And is FSG doing that? I don't believe they are. I think they're happy with a top 4 finish every year. That brings in the revenue, that brings in Champions League money. And if we win the league, then that's a bonus for them. But at the end of the day, winning the league doesn't really do a significant difference, which is unfortunate. But, there's a lot of players that are dead wood that are just not good enough. They've been here for too long. Origi, as much as we love him, he's not good enough to be a backup or even be a starter. Minamino, yes, he may not have had the time, but I think we can all judge him enough. Keeping James Milner on as a like a 5th choice centre mid is baffling. Like he's just not there anymore. And re-signing Jordan Henderson, I think we should have re-signed Jordan Henderson, but I don't think you can keep him in the first team. So it's.
You think Hender will become James Milner in the squad when James Milner moves on? If you get where I'm coming from.
Yeah, the only issue with that is I think this is the first season really where James Milner's been picking up injuries. I think before then he was always available. He could play left. He could play anywhere. He'd had his whole career of playing in every single position for every single team he's had. Henderson has really only played in centre mid. So I think he'll become that voice of, the wisdom in the squad. But I'd rather, if you give me, a 33-year-old Milner and a 33-year-old Henderson, I'd snap your hand off for Milner. And I think even within a fan base, it's a very much a nostalgia thing. And I don't want to use the whole top red, bottom red thing, but I think a lot of the fan base does have a love towards players, and that's completely understandable. Look, Jordan Henderson, for everything he's done, will go down as a Liverpool legend, same with James Milner. But there has to be a time where we say these guys aren't good enough. They're not good enough to challenge the top anymore. And that is something that Man City have done so well. Pep Guardiola realises that the only way to compete in nowadays game is to sign players. You have to. You can't keep that small squad that, Klopp might have been able to in 2013 when this money wasn't readily available for clubs. But you need a massive squad now. You need quality in that squad. Yes, you want to rely on youngsters, and I think we've done that quite well with the likes of Tyler Morton, Harvey Elliott, Curtis Jones, Kate Gordon coming up too. But we need them class players, and it's I think Jarrod of Villa is sorry for rambling, but I think Jarrod of Villa is a really good point. He's come in and he said, look, I need these players. I know it's January, but I need players. I need a midfielder. I need, a left back, and I need a midfielder. And it looks like he's going to get a midfielder. He's come in and he's got that, which is proven that you can get players in January. Yes, it's harder, but we have the money. Why shouldn't we be able to go? And, I know you've mentioned this before. Where's the money gone? It doesn't make any sense where all the money's gone. So there's money there. We should go out and sign these players. Even if we have to sign a little, a bit of a premium on them, we should. I think we should do it. But apologies for me massive rant.
That's all right. That's all right. That's what we're here for, to share our views. Jack, the big problem for me in the squad right now is it's all very well and good. Me, you, Charlie, Jack, everybody sitting here, Chris, everybody sitting here talking about selling players. But when you're down to 18 months left on contracts, some big decisions are going to be made about who gets let run down, who gets moved on, and maybe who gets renewed. And they're difficult decisions that are going to alienate many people in the fan base.
Yeah, I mean, I was just going to say that. That was going to be my big point that I was going to make is you want to sign. I mean, if you ask everybody in the chat, everybody here, how many players do Liverpool need to sign to go to the top level? If they need to sign 4 players, you need to let 4 players go. You sign 6 players, you got to let 6 players go. And there's only 24-man squad in terms of the Premier League. You're going to have to let go some players you like. I'm going to have to let go of Naby Keita if I want to get a guy that I really like. And that's going to be tough read. I have to accept that maybe a Mane or a Firmino has to move on just because. And like for instance, like Mick saying that 7 players you need to move on 7 players to try and bring in the squad to where you want it to be. And we always say City have a deeper squad than Liverpool. City's Premier League squad registration is 20 players. Liverpool's is 24. That's how many players are literally registered. Liverpool have a deeper squad than Manchester City do. That's why injuries have hit them.
It's not as quality though, is
quality.
It?
I agree.
Like we've got like Adrian on the team list. Like you might as well just wipe him off.
They have Zach Steffen and Scott Carson as well, who I love Zach Steffen. He's an American, one of the only American representatives in the Prem. But again, and those are back.
You do have LeBron. You do have LeBron there at Chelsea.
The LeBron James of soccer.
That is true. He can play center mid. He can play center forward. He's a tremendous option. Look, and for me, it's really, really tough. I think the English player is going to be one of the most interesting things in what happens there because it stuns me that Adrian and Karius, who are both registered in the Premier League, by the way, fill out these spots.
That is criminal.
It's amazing, to be honest. In fairness, Jones, Elliott, Nico Williams, and Gordon, I believe, were 4 all guys who could be homegrown or not registered. They're under 21 guys. So those are, again, I'm not worried about that necessarily, but I've kind of lost the original discussion point. But it's a tough figuring out where this team goes from here. I think that they've missed a few windows. That's really making it tough right now because I'm not sure how ready Klopp is going to be, especially with this upcoming summer, which could be very, very difficult due to just how late the season will end. And this next season has to start early because the World Cup is taking up 6 months of the season. If you want to bring in an entire new group of players, betting them in, getting them prepared is going to be difficult. So we did not time this very well, in my eyes, at least. I would have loved to see a few more signings made in the past and put us in a better spot than we are now.
Just to hit on that window thing, the window after the Champions League was absolutely criminal. I can't believe the club got away with bringing Minamino and Sepp van den Berg in after, being at the top of the top. We made some good signings after the Premier League, Thiago Jota, but I always look back at that window and think, why have we not signed anyone? You're at the top there. Go and bring in the next generation of people because you knock on their door and they're not even going to question. It's going to be like, the European champions of asking to sign me. Like, of course I'm going to go and sign for you. But no, we went and signed Minamino and Sepp van den Berg, who are useless.
Don't disrespect Big Sepp, the Ginger Maldini.
I don't understand the hate on Sepp because
look, Sepp van. I'm not hating on Sepp.
Yeah.
I think I'm saying that's not the quality of player we should have brought in. We should have brought in, a world-class winger and probably a world-class midfielder as well, or even just a striker. Because even at that point, like Bobby was on fire, but I knew after that season he was dropping off. I just knew it, and he did. He's dropped off since then, which is it's hard to say, but it's him and Mane are starting to put that window in perspective massively. And it's a massive opportunity wasted.
Well, Charlie, I want to hit on one thing really quick. Sorry to interrupt you, Craig, but you say the money, whereas like the money's there. The money I just don't think is there. If you look at the actual, it was in a stream on the transfer and I did a while back where I pulled up the literal numbers, made a few people angry about it. But the money has been pushed into transfers in the past and now into the wage budget. This team just doesn't make as much money in comparison to Manchester United, especially. The owners need to invest. That's how a signing is made. It's not like there's money sitting there.
Or be willing to take on some debt.
Exactly. If they're not willing to do that, then we're not able to make a signing by living within our means. And if we live within our means, this is the apex. We have to sell somebody for some big money. And if we're living within our means, we are morons for letting probably our 3 best assets that we could sell, Firmino, Mane, Salah, down onto 12 months when we would ideally sell them, because they will be of even worse value if those are our best options to try and acquire other things within the club.
Well, let's stick, Chris, on Salah for 1 second before we jump back into a roundup of some transfer links. Every day that goes by, his hand gets strengthened, his hand strengthens, the club hand weakens, and we get more and more nervous as fans, mate, because you're going to get the media brief from both sides. It's no accident that certain interviews come out when they do, and that certain tidbits come out, because both sides, it's a game of brinksmanship here. But ultimately, we don't care as fans as long as it ends up with Mohamed Salah signing a new contract.
Yeah, and as the boys have mentioned, like, there's a lot of players who are coming down to this point, and we should have sold them at a certain times. Obviously, Mo Salah is definitely not on that list, but we should have had this contract wrapped up and done before, 18 months left, 17 months left now. Like, it's just genuinely ridiculous how it's got to this point. In fact, we could have probably got it done cheaper if we'd have done it in the summer, giving him an extra 2 years or something. I know hindsight's a wonderful thing, but man, he is so vitally important to this football club that maybe 80 odd million pounds over the next 4 years is a very sensible investment. And we can let him go after that, after he's done that. He's built like a brick. He's chiseled. He makes everyone jealous. At the end of the day, he's going to be playing long into his 30s. Maybe not with Liverpool, but over here in Europe. And he's still got so much quality. I still think he's growing in quality. He's learning. He's hungry. Every day it goes by is frustrating, but I still have this definite feeling that it's going to happen. Maybe they're going to wait until the summer to announce it, or maybe they're going to wait until later this month when he's back from AFCON. But for me, it's definitely going to happen. I think it'd be ridiculous if it didn't. And if it didn't, there'd be a lot of anger from the fans.
Just to give you some context of 80 million too, Ousmane Dembele wants 200 million for 5 years at a club. 200 million, and the guy's made out of paper mache compared to 80 million for the best player in the world. The fact that it's even we're not just snapped them up straight away. And I know it's not FSG. Look, we all blame FSG for this. John Henry's not sitting in the room with Salah's agent being like, we can't do 80 million. We can do 79 million and 99 pounds. But, it's not them. I think it's whoever is running this Salah negotiation, they've got the job on the back, because if they mess it up, and they deserve to be sacked if they don't sign him up, because they will never, ever, ever get forgiveness from the fans for letting probably one of the best Premier League players we've ever had go because we weren't willing to offer him a fair wage. So it's I'd much rather take him than Ousmane Dembele.
I seen an article, I think it was in The Athletic, where they spoke to an agent who said that at 18 months left, there's a good chance that somebody in Salah's position would sign on. 12 months, that decreases. If it goes down to 6 months, best of luck getting somebody to sign on for a new contract. So with that in mind, Jack, do you think there is any world that FSG sell Mohamed Salah, even if it is to fund that rebuild? Do you think they have the stones to do that, to make that move?
It boggles the mind to think that that's even a possibility, because I'm trying to run through the scenarios in my head. So what if we win the Champions League? He has it's like a nice farewell almost. He lives with one more major trophy, and he moves out of the country, like to a PSG. But even then, it'd be the worst feeling, because what are you then replacing Salah with? That's why I don't understand. Everyone says like the Moneyball aspect of it, because it's FSG. There's always going to be those comparisons. If you get 90 million for him, I'm pulling that out of the air, obviously. Who are you replacing him with that brings you even a fraction of that production? And you then have to pay him his wages. And you're looking at a free, if you reframe it for FSG, best player in the world on a free contract, or on a free deal for 90 million over a couple years. That's a great deal Moneyball wise. But just because it's a current player, maybe there's some sort of reservations. My only hope for why it's not been signed yet is that they imagine a big rebuild in the summer, and they don't want to have the top end of their wage structure pushed so far ahead before they bring in some new faces. That's my only hope. Because say you bring in, I don't know, an Mbappe. I don't think it'll happen. But say Mbappe is signed on a free. If the top end of your wage structure is, 250 grand a week? If that's where it currently is, Mbappe can't really say, if I want to go to Liverpool, I'm going to push it to 400 grand. But if Salah's there, that is a much easier argument for him to make. That's my only hope. But I think when I look at Mane and his contract situation, I say either a contract is signed or they let him run all the way down to the end. They don't sell him. I think I'm in the same boat with Salah, where they can always frame it as we couldn't come to an agreement on a contract. They don't end it on their own terms. They end it on mutual terms when they can't come to an agreement on a contract, and they just end it in the summer of 2023. I would be stunned if he was sold.
Yeah, it's normally I would agree. Common sense would dictate that I should agree, but I don't know where to draw the line with these owners. I really don't in the transfer market, and I am mindful as well of how we do go about, Chris, rebuilding this team or revitalizing this team and getting ready. Because I just don't want to be in a scenario where Klopp goes out with a whimper and he hasn't had a chance to build a second team, because that's almost the measure by which many managers are made and their longevity, and if they could rebuild and leave the club in a better place. And we know that that's firmly something that Klopp wants to do.
Yeah, I think so. It is all very somber, isn't it? Like thinking about the legacy.
It's depressing. We're browbeating fans into lowering expectations.
Yeah. What I will say is that there was a point where we had literally zero expectations. And I know a lot of so-called, top Reds, shall we say, we'll use the term, will say, oh yeah, when we came, we were in, the Europa League places, and now we're fighting for titles. Why are you complaining? And they sort of have a point, because, if you'd have been told now that we'd be in second place and we'd be angry about it 6 years ago, we'd be like, what? We're angry about second place? What are you on about? You know what I mean? But at the same time, when you've got it, you really want more, and you want to you want to grow into a dynasty that Jurgen Klopp should have been allowed to build. Obviously, he hasn't been in the way that we would have loved, and we're seeing Pep Guardiola do now. I don't think his dynasty would be ruined. I don't think his legacy at Liverpool would be ruined purely because of the man that he is and the way that he got us out of trouble. But at the same time, it would leave a slight bitter taste in the mouth.
Yeah, I mean, look on the owners and on the positives they've done. Yes, of course, they did deliver us a league title. They deliver us Jurgen Klopp, and we've given them the credit for those things. But ultimately, we keep hearing that they want sustainable success. They want to build. We're able to compete. All of these great sound bites, Charlie, that aren't followed up with action.
Yeah, it's look, I don't think his legacy will be ruined. I think he goes down as a Liverpool legend forever. I don't think anything that will happen, unless he gets us relegated, which won't happen. I don't think it'll be tarnished. I do think it'll be looked on as a bit of a bitter ending. Maybe not bitter is the right word, but a bit of a downer towards the end, because we know how much Klopp loved the side. We know how much the players like Salah, love the fans. It is a real family when you look at it to other clubs. The stress that Man United are in. It's all of our players are very much together and appreciate the fans. But I think if it's hard to say, if Jurgen Klopp leaves Liverpool with 4 trophies in 9 years, it is disappointing. Yes, we didn't expect to, be challenging for titles for every year, but I think that's a bit. You've got to delve deeper into that as well, with the whole, Klopp not really taking the trophies seriously, and us only really, competing for the main trophies. But at the end of the day, 2 of them trophies that we've won are because we won a bigger trophy. So because we won the Champions League, if we didn't win the Champions League, we'd only be leaving with 1 trophy, 1 Premier League title. which is sad to say. I do hope. I still think he'll sign another year extension to take him into 10 years. But I don't want to say it, but I think it will be a bit of a disappointment if it ends like this for Klopp.
I think it'll be a sense of anticlimax for a lot of us because the expectation and hope is so high. Jack, one thing that stands out from this Athletic piece was the phrase "Liverpool's boxes to be ticked, young, hungry, dynamic, with a high ceiling." I would say, mate, that's standard across the board now. We've seen a movement by a lot of clubs now to look towards these young, hungry players rather than the well-established big money transfers. And I don't know if that's because of COVID, where football is in the world, or just because people are seeing that with this hunger and dynamism and athleticism, you get the results. You get the buy-in.
Yeah, there's a great amount of balance, but it's like, would you rather buy a new car or a used car? It's obviously a very poor analogy because there's a lot more nuance to it, especially in football. But, there is, I think, a lot of love in football for the potential. And I'm not gonna say it's driven by like FIFA or like video games, but people love what could be rather than what has or what is. And that, I think, does cloud the mind in a lot of different spots. But that was, I think, that article, especially when I saw that part that you highlighted, Craig, just made me feel like this is just tossed out to placate us hungry fans for transfers. Like, oh, we're looking for hungry players who are young, dynamic. They fit a lot of spots for us. It's just buzzwords, It's just that's a smart transfer decision. A guy who's flexible, who's young, who's ready to be ambitious for the squad. That's just a good signing. That's what we have done.
I have the word cheap.
Yeah, cheap would be a great buy for FSG. It's really tough to understand, how much to actually make of this. I think again, January is a really tough window to make any sort of signings in. But again, I think, and I wanted to jump in really quick on that last discussion on Klopp. It all depends, in my opinion, on what you said. So Jurgen Klopp, is he a disappointment or is he, overrated, underrated in terms of his legacy post 2024? It all depends on what you say. Is it Jurgen Klopp saved Liverpool Football Club? He's a legend. Incredibly accurate statement. Jurgen Klopp, one of the best managers in Premier League history. Then you begin to say, well, he couldn't beat Guardiola. He lost out 4 out of 5 years. I think the only thing I'll say is with the young players, hopefully FSG are planning for post-Klopp. Hopefully they're planning for guys who won't kind of have a Fergie effect where you have a really old squad, doesn't really kind of transition well into the next generation. And it's a group of players who is capable of moving over. But if you had a very similar squad, 2 years from now, when you're entering into the final 6 months of Klopp's reign, you're looking at a very, very tough transitory period, both of managers and in terms of your players. So I really, it's a tough situation to be in. We're almost making it for ourselves because there's not a ton of, I don't want to say there's no on-pitch success, but the Premier League feels like it's over more or less. The Champions League is a little while from now. So we're kind of just figuring out ways to pass the time. And we have such like doom and gloom views on the team right now, when in reality, we're second in the league. And that, I think that should not be overstated. We are in a very healthy spot, I think. And whatever happens, I think there's a lot of potential for success this season and beyond.
What I would say, I suppose, Chris, to add to that is I don't care for second, third, or fourth in the league. It's not first. So I would put that point across. That's certainly where I'd like us to be dining. But if we get a crystal ball out, Chris, what does the summer look like to you? What do you think is going to happen? Some established players moving? Will we get a couple of marquee signings? I know this is guesswork, but from your research and from what you guys do, what's your initial thoughts?
The dream is, we're probably seeing, the likes of, I think all the players that are out of contract go. I think that's the plan. I think we might see Nico Williams leave, especially with Bradley coming through. Probably maybe see Minamino leave, but I wouldn't be against him staying. And then we'll probably see 4 signings, I'd expect. And that would probably come in the forward line, midfield, right back potentially. But even then, you got Conor Bradley coming through. So, look, I again, as you said, it's all guesswork, but I would expect 4 signings, for 4 senior signings that are all within the age of 21 to 25. And if it doesn't happen, then there's got to be questions there. At least 3. It's got to be at least 3.
One more question I have is, why aren't we in for the likes of Mbappe, Haaland, Vlahovic, these type of players who seem to be these generational talents with regards to Haaland and Mbappe that was spoken about? I don't know how much more available Kylian Mbappe can be than a quote-unquote free transfer at the end of the season. For somebody like John W. Henry, who flew him around on his jet trying to convince him to come to us before he left Monaco for PSG, feels like a strange situation when he's improved all these years later, still really young and potentially free.
Yeah, well, I think wage structure. I think they've got their head so wrapped around the wage structure, and if we mess the wage structure up, everything goes to shit. Where I don't think that's true. I think that's the main issue, and I also think that they wanted to sign Mbappe at Monaco. I think if their vision for what Mbappe would have been, which was probably, one of the best players in the world in the next 3-4 years, which is what he has become, I think they knew if they didn't get him at Monaco, they weren't getting him at PSG because, he would be too expensive or his wages would be like stupidly high. As much as I've had my master plan of Nike paying half his wages and all that. As much as I've thought of every way around, I just don't think FSG would rake up the money. I don't think that's what they're about. As far as I'm aware, they don't do that with Red Bull, the Red Sox either. So it's just a tough one. But I just going on like who do we think is leaving? I mean, look at James Milner's leaving. That needs to be replaced with a world class, like a top midfielder. Nico Williams not so much. Origi's gone. We need a top class forward. One of Keita or Ox will probably be gone. Again, need another midfielder to replace him. And we could see Mane leave. So we need a top class winger or forward. So as Chris said, I think 4 is the absolute bare minimum that we need to be getting next summer. But Jack said it, transfers in January, they're hard to get. It's this massive illusion around they're hard to get. I don't think they are. I think if you offer a club what they want, most clubs nowadays don't really move on their, unless there's a release clause like Porto. Most clubs aren't going to move on, okay, here's, let's say, for instance, Jarrod Bowen is one. Jarrod Bowen, we could have got him for 40 million in summer. In January, you're probably looking at 50 million. But I think West Ham had snatched that, and they can go and sign 2 players in January to bring through. It's a little bit harder, but I don't think it limits it. I think you just maybe have to pay a bit of a premium. And I think a serious club wouldn't faze them if they were to pay a premium for a player that they wanted. But it's a tough one. But just like breaking news, sort of. Gerard Romero, I think his name is, really reliable Barcelona journalist, has said that Luis Suarez is considering an offer from Aston Villa to go and sign for them in January. So he's getting the gang back together.
Wow. That's certainly one. He's gone for Harry Redknapp there, isn't he? Oh my God!
He's going to be bringing Ryan Kent.
To jump in on that, what Charlie said with Villa, I think getting January signings is harder because if you look at the players they brought in, they were readily available. Yeah. Like Felipe Coutinho was, like, Barcelona were trying to sell him to anyone and everyone, and Luca Digne. I mean, what Everton were thinking, sacking Rafa the week after they sold him, just because Rafa didn't like him. I think they were both readily available, and it all depends on the individual player. I think more than that.
I agree to a certain extent with that, but I still think Gerrard would have been backed if he had. I think it was just perfect timing with Luca Digne. They needed a left back, and one was available. But I still think he was going into that market getting a left back, no matter what was said, because his owners are willing to invest in the club and back him up. So it's Aston Villa, they went and signed big after Grealish, but all that money that's being put in is being invested into them. You know, Coutinho, they're paying all of Coutinho's wages, which I think is like 400 odd grand a week. And they're paying that because they trust in Jarrod. It's I just don't get that same investment or feeling from FSG into Klopp. I feel like Klopp has a few players that he'd be like, well, I'd love to sign this fella in January, and FSG are like, nah, we'll wait till summer. You know, we can get them down 50p in the summer transfer window.
Are we getting Rafinha, Jack?
Please. If I think it was the last stream I was on where I talked about timing of transfers and whether or not Rafinha fits, and I'm not sure too much has changed since then. I think he would be a tremendous bit of business, especially if Leeds continue to struggle. But if Leeds struggle down the table, he wants to play Champions League football. Looks really like it's a few years out at Leeds because they're going to need a lot of investment from their owners to keep on developing. He would make perfect sense. My only fear is Rafinha seems like he would be a very natural replacement for Salah. Is if Rafinha is brought in, I almost view that as maybe Salah. It might be going at some way. So that I think it should be done, but will it actually happen? I really struggle to see that. And I think that just going back to the January point that we hit on quite a lot, our history of January signings in recent years is Van Dijk and Minamino. I'm not missing a name, but those two guys, Minamino or Van Dijk,
Stephen Colker. Don't forget Stephen Colker, man.
And then Ben Davies and Kabak last year. What do all those players do? Minamino was a bargain for £7 million because he's going to be sold for double that, even if he has only played half dozen games over how many years. Van Dijk filled a gaping hole in the squad. And Colker, I think, to a certain extent, and Kabak and Davies were trying to fill holes. It's really interesting. I don't think we fill anybody because who are we selling? I think if we bring in, I don't know, let's say Luis Diaz, on that left wing, are we selling a forward? Are we getting rid of Origi? Are we getting rid of Minamino? And then you have to kind of accept a lower fee unless you maybe loan them out or something like that. But I really don't know what to expect.
I've saved the best for last, by the way, gents. I've one big one to hit you with before we finish up. Sorry, I forgot to cross you, Jack. I just got excited there because I remembered. And when I remember something, I generally get excited because when you're like me, mate, you forget a lot of stuff. So there was something came out yesterday from Daniel Nielsen. Did you guys see this? That said, Camavinga allowed to leave Real Madrid for 50 million quid. Liverpool keen, one to keep an eye on.
What?
You're breaking new news to me. I never heard that. That's mad if that's true because we were linked with him before he went to Real Madrid. I thought Ancelotti loved Camavinga though, and their fans love him too.
Who's this guy?
But that'd be crazy if that was to happen. I'd definitely take him, but I can't see that. Surely, how much did they sign him for, or was he free?
About 30.
Yeah, he was cheap.
He would have been free at the end of this season.
£28 million was how much.
Yeah. It was a report on the transfer room 4 days ago. Charlie, come on. 4 hours ago. Sorry, 4 hours ago.
Did Neil do that?
Neil wrote it. Yeah. Neil wrote it.
Of course he did. I honest to God didn't know about that. I've been cutting down trees all day. So
this Daniel Nielsen guy.
Connor sent this to me yesterday evening. Actually, midnight. He sent it to me. So, I mean, look, I don't think there's a single one of us would say no.
Now, this Daniel Nielsen guy does look a bit sus, though. I'm not going to lie.
Nielsen guy did say about a week ago, Liverpool are stepping up their chase for Zakari and willing to offer £7 million. So he's kind of just midfielder, defensive minded, just throw it at a dart. Liverpool. So I'm not going crazy, but I think it'd be a great signing. He would fit very well.
We're all thirsty for it. We're all thirsty for it, but no way. I don't know. I don't like the look of this guy.
I'm taking any positives I can get at this point. I'm just looking for people to start talking about Jude Bellingham so I can start.
Shall I tweet it again? People will believe me, Craig. I'll just say sources have told me.
Well, look, Craig, and on Bellingham, because I think 2023 is the window for him. Summer 2023 makes the most sense because will they let him and Houlden go in the same window? Probably not. So if he's to be signed, that's probably the dream window. We have not planned ourselves too well unless Harvey Elliott is kind of the stopgap for that right center mid spot. I don't want to see Jordan Henderson starting for another year and a half in the midfield for Liverpool. I love Jordan Henderson. but there should have been some sort of, again, transitory period. So I would love Bellingham. I think it's probably the long-term dream, especially if, Jarrod is the successor for Klopp. But again, is the planning just off?
The planning is the question for all of this, Chris, isn't it? Because we really just do not have a clue what's going on. Like I've seen Arsenal into Vlahovic again in the past week or two. Like that's almost
There's
disgusting.
no way he ends up there, surely.
It's
There's
almost
no
disgusting.
way.
Did you see like the way he with Vlahovic waved when he was leaving the pitch after their last match for Fiorentina? He was subbed off, and it was very much like a goodbye kind of like clap.
Maybe, but I can't see him going to Arsenal, surely.
If we're a serious club, we should be after Vlahovic. It shouldn't even be.
Stink, bro. They stink.
How did he stink?
I don't
He wouldn't fit. He would not fit.
Yes,
I'm telling you right now.
But Chris, didn't you like? I'm already forgetting his name. The tall Dutch bloke.
Yeah, Gakpo.
Yeah, but it's yeah, but his pressures and stuff is fine. Like
Vlahovic is a year younger and performing in a top league.
Overperforming his XG.
How is he? So what if he's overperforming? He scored a
Because
few
that mean
penalties.
he'll come down. He'll come down, bro. He'll come down. Vlahovic
I swear you said that last season. We had a discussion, and you said that before the season started about Vlahovic that he was overperforming and that he'd come down.
He still is. He still is overperforming his XG.
Well, how long can you overperform for?
So he's going to come down, bro.
So is Mo Salah still overperforming? Yeah. He's still overperforming from his first season.
The only player to consistently overperform his XG is Lionel Messi. So that's all I'll say.
Yeah,
I get nervous when I hear of us signing players from Serie A. It always makes me very nervous. I don't like the Frank Kessie links either. It just screams of cheap assets to me. That's not him as a player. If we were signing him for 15, 20 million and he was who Klopp wanted, I'd be like, fair enough, but it just thinks of we're signing him because he's potentially on it, or we could sign him because he's on a free. I mean,
maybe.
We've been linked with, if my memory's right, Jack, I can think of 5 Borussia Mönchengladbach players in the last year that we've been linked with in one form or another. And yeah, we know very well that relations between the two clubs aren't great from the Ryan Brewster saga.
I'm not remembering this for some reason. This is just like
we were supposed to play a pre-season friendly with Borussia Mönchengladbach. Ryan Brewster was being chased by a lot of clubs in Europe. Borussia Mönchengladbach were one of those. Liverpool cancelled the friendly because of it.
That is brand new information from my mind. That would kind of make a bit of sense. We're a big fan of their players, but they just are like, they don't like our ownership. That would make a bit of sense.
So, gentlemen, one name. Give me one name each who you think we're going to sign in the summer. One name. You're going to die on this hill, by the way. So, for you, Chris, you can get your Gakpo love and you can put that in the bin, mate, because it's not happening.
To be honest, I don't think it's going to happen purely because he's not had more than one good season. If I'm going to say which one I think will happen, I think Bowen will happen, but it just depends how much.
It's finished 1-1, by the way, in the Brighton-Chelsea game.
Oh, get in. Viva La Potter, mate.
Romelu Lukaku, 100 million waste of time for Chelsea. So, who was that, Chris? Who did you go with?
Jarrod Bowen, mate. Jarrod Bowen is the one that I see happening more than any other.
Charlie?
Oh, I'm convinced by Luis Diaz. I think the reports have been too consistent out to South America to say that it isn't going to happen. Luis Diaz is sick.
Oh, he looks like him. I mean, actually looks like him to me.
I don't know about that. I don't see the similarity.
Each other.
Maybe bring Dom Solanke back. He's doing good for Bournemouth. Do we have a buyback clause or 20 sell-on clause?
Sure we do.
We have one of the two on him. But I'd say Luis Diaz, and then if I had to choose one after that, I think Frank Kessie. I think we might sign him on a free transfer, but I'll stick with Luis Diaz.
I'm so petty, Charlie, that I seen he missed a penalty for Porto the other night. I was like, well, that's the end of me and Luis Diaz then. That's the end of any hope I had of falling for him.
Well, yeah, he won player of the month, forward of the month, and goal of the month for December in the Portuguese league. So, yeah, it was firing on all cylinders for the Liverpool scouts.
The links to Pedro Goncalves or Goncalves, I don't know how you pronounce his name, they've dried up as well. I mean, he's got in there and done Bruno Fernandes things at Sporting.
At Sporting, actually.
Jack did a video on him back in the day.
For yourself, Jack, what hill would you like to die on?
It'll be a nice batch of Dell and Spiron laptops. That's what we'll be buying in the summer. A nice.
You can get all, if we need a laptop, mate, you know, John Achterberg has already let it be known. No problem. Get yourself down to PC World. No problem. Put it on the account.
No, I think Charlie mentioned it. He mentioned like 6 names. He kind of stole a bunch of them. I think Frank Kessie makes a lot of sense in the midfield. He'd be an interesting option. Cheap as well. Wages would be a little bit up there for maybe the player he is. But I think Jarrod Bowen, actually makes a lot of sense. If West Ham fail to make the Champions League again, he may look at that and say, making the next leap. And I think it makes a lot of sense for everyone involved. English, can't hurt. I think he's very flexible. He'd be willing to kind of be that rotation guy early on, like Jota was, be on the back end. So I'd say Bowen and Kessie would be my 2 guys, as well as the Dell laptops.
We're going to come back to this at the end of the summer, and we'll have signed all 3 of them, and we'll look like geniuses.
Well, I was banging that Hereford and Jarrod Bowen drum fairly early, in fairness, before.
Same. I tell you what, Charlie was against it starting off.
I got on the Bowen bush pretty quickly.
You were, though. You were on it quickly, and then everyone else has slowly joined. And, keep pushing it, boys. It's going to happen.
Look, I really appreciate Jack, Charlie, and Chris giving up their time and sharing their research and stuff with us as well. Thank you to our sponsors, Manscaped. Thank you guys for watching. I'm sure we'll squeeze another 1 or 2 of these in before the depressing January transfer window comes to its depressing conclusion. Thank you guys for your time again. Don't forget, check out the LFC Transfer Room on Twitter, on YouTube, everywhere. Just go have a look. They're my go-to for any transfer information. Charlie, you're killing it with the Twitter account, mate. Well done on there, and congrats again to all you guys for your success. And thank you for coming on. We'll chat to you soon, guys. Take care. Bye-bye.